if you're someone who doesn't think about it that much and you turn up to a race and then you can't race because you've got 38 centimeter bars, that's a day ruined.
You've had your porridge for breakfast, you've packed your gels, you've laid out your kit, you've pinned on your numbers, and they've said, actually, 10 millimeters off, mate.
And you're going to win the...
Those are really narrow bars. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Off the Back from Cycling Weekly. I'm Anna-Maria Rook, the North American editor, and today I'm joined by Adam.
Hello.
And Tom.
Hello.
How are we all doing? We had quite the weekend of racing.
Well, we're recording this now on Tuesday, and I still am thinking a lot about it. But this is the same with every time Milan-San Remo is. Like, for a week or so afterwards, or at least until the next big race comes around, all you can think about is those finales. And we had two very different finales and two very exciting finales, which I'm sure we will come on to speak about.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was, man, it's a monument for a reason, I think. Like, we're like, oh, Milan-San Remo, and it's really just the last third of that race that you can tune in for because of the climbs. But it offered so much excitement throughout the race this year, and yeah, it's hard to watch. And this is what I was going to ask you guys. It's hard to watch because there's two races happening at the same time. Do you split screen it, or how do you make sure you don't miss anything from either race?
I mean, to be quite honest, I wasn't watching either live, although I did catch the final, 5 kilometers of the men's race once I'd figured out what was going on. But with anything like that, it's especially true. I mean, it's going to be true of Roubaix this year, which me and Tom are going to, when you've got two races on at the same time. The same is true of Flanders as well. I kind of concentrate on the one that's finishing first and then switch over, which is always to the detriment of the race finishing second, whatever that is. Like, obviously with San Remo or Strada, that's the women's race, although they tend to finish quite a lot earlier. Whereas with Roubaix, Flanders especially, they ended so close together that by the time when I've been to Flanders and like the men's race finishes, and you've got no idea what is going on in the women's race until it switches, and then it's like 10k to go and you've got no idea. So it's a bit tricky. I hate double screening.
I'm the same. I went to a friend's house, and something that his housemate referred to as a cycling party, which I think he meant in a derogatory way, but I was like, that sounds brilliant. I wish all the parties I went to were cycling parties. And we watched the women's race first, then had a little bit of lunch, and then by that time it was getting to the quote-unquote exciting bit in the men's race, and it worked out perfectly.
That's nice. Yeah, I think here I had it on because it's really early for me. I think it starts at 2:30 in the morning. So I had it on, the women's race on when I woke up, and then after that was done, I made breakfast and coffee, and then watched the rest of the men's race.
But was that live, or was that kind of catching up?
That's live, yeah.
Oh well.
Yeah, it's early morning here if you want to watch anything live, and it's usually worth it. Like there's been in the past a couple races where a dominant rider will be off the front, and I'm like tuning out and going back to bed, and I know how this is going to end, but this time around it kept me on my toes for sure.
It is really worth it. It is really worth it. Sorry to continue that point, but I know a lot of people who kind of care a lot about spoilers, and so like, the day of a race, they're like, you can't mention what's happened until I've had a chance to watch it that evening, whether that's highlights or because they recorded it. And I'm of the school that if I haven't watched it live, I'm not going to watch it. I'll watch, obviously, if I'm going to write about it, I'll watch some highlights or kind of maybe even watch a lot of it. But if I'm just kind of watching it for fun, that's it. Like, either I watch it live, and because that's the beauty of live sport, is it's happening, it's drama happening in real life, or it's not happening at all. So, I'm all for spoilers. As soon as the race is over, tell me who won, basically.
We actually had a comment on one of our race reports on social media the other day, and these ones always make me laugh because they were like, oh, brilliant, thanks for that. Now I've got that recorded, but how am I going to be able to go back and watch the recording now? You've ruined it for me. And every time, I never reply to the comments, that's generally my rule, but every time I just think, we are literally the news. That is the only thing that we are here for, is to say what that is.
Yeah.
I don't know if they want like an embargo on it until they've got home from their shopping or their day at the beach.
No, just don't go online. Like, don't go on social media. Like,
if you care about it that much, stay offline.
Yeah.
I prefer like a surprise, and I love watching sports live, and so I'm willing to get up at ungodly hours in the morning just to watch it live, because it just takes something away if I wake up and I accidentally see an email, or even if I stay off social media, it might be an email or a text message from someone saying how good was that, and then I miss out. So yeah, I'm like I get up and watch it, and if I don't do that, then it's my own fault if it gets ruined.
And the good thing is, then you've got the rest of your Saturday ahead of you. Whereas for me, I spent all of the beautiful sunshine rotting inside watching bike racing. So I
There
know
is
we're
that.
supposed to feel sorry for anyone that's watching outside of Europe, but sometimes I think it would be nice to be done by like 10 o'clock.
Yeah, or much earlier.
Even actually a lot earlier, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a thing that people don't realize for us journalists when we're on the ground at these races. We don't see anything of the race. We see like little snippets or whatever, but especially when there's two races on, you're spending more time, getting to where you need to be, or especially if one race finishes along before the other, you're interviewing people, you're starting to work on your content already. And it's actually more sometimes enjoyable to report from home, because you get to actually experience the race and see what's going on versus when you're on the ground.
I think the amount that I've seen of the Tour de France in the last 5 years would astonish like a regular person, because they think that's your job. That's kind of the best race of the year, and I just think I've mainly been spending that at auto grills, or kind of it's just like running to the press room or something like that. Like not last year, can't have been last year because I was driving. So the year before, one of the stages that Biniam Girmay won, we missed the finish. Like we were as they came across the finish line, we were driving around like the bit at the finish to get to the press car park, and the car had to go along like the bit with the buses. So there were all these riders, and I was in the car like, I hope this isn't the moment that like, I don't know, Mike Turnerson gets hit by a red Kia. It's captured on TV. So yeah, I don't know about you, Tom.
Yeah, one of the attendees at the cycling party I went to asked me what the best Tour de France stage was that I'd been to. And the phrasing in the question was very much angled towards what was like, the best one that you'd seen, the racing. And I was like, I'm afraid I've not seen any Tour de France in the recent years. Sometimes if the bit at the end of the race where we stand as the media, if you can see a bit down the finish line, you might catch them crossing the finish line. But other times it's very much gauging from people's reactions as to who's actually won the race, or trying to get some patchy signal to find out who's won it online.
Yeah.
Or waiting for the text from the Tour de France organisers to say, Jonathan Milan's won, and then everyone runs to the little Trek bus or something.
Yeah.
Mountains are probably your best bet, because sometimes you're kind of like going up on a cable car, and you can watch them come from a distance. But other than that, no, it's madness. Although that said, in Paris last year, I was stood on the Champs-Élysées, which did mean I did know Wout was in front, so that's good at least.
That's exciting. Yeah, I was gonna say mountain. I like summit finishes because there's usually a jumbotron or a TV or something, and you're just there because you're not allowed to go up or down while the race is happening, and you're actually watching it. You're seeing the crowd. You get to kind of see what people are experiencing. You're not just running around like a mad woman. And then my favorite moment is always when everyone's just clustered around that one person that had cell phone reception and watching the race unfold. Like, there's like 10 people watching this tiny screen. And yeah, I think people don't realize how little of the race we see and how just chaotic it is to come back and do a report, and that it's very enjoyable to watch it from home, even at 2:30 in the morning.
Do you know where you never get any of this nonsense?
Where's that?
Track cycling. Track cycling literally revolves around you. You can you stand and report, and it all just happens in the immediate vicinity of you. It's perfect. Anyway, sorry. Track cycling's not on our show plan today, and I've managed to get it in, but that's my thing done now.
Yeah. Well, if there's anything you want to add about what happened in track cycling this last week, you're more than welcome to.
Nothing's happened, but I've managed to shoehorn it in anyway.
Perfect. So yeah, back to the racing this week. After Tadej's very dominant and perhaps a little boring performance at Strade, how exciting was this week's finale?
I've seen narratives of people saying this was perhaps his greatest win yet, and I am inclined to agree. Everyone knew that the game plan was gonna be a mountain train on the Cipressa and try and go as fast as there, rid the group out, and then keep that pace on and attack over the Poggio. He ended up crashing with about 30 kilometers to go, floundering on Brandon McNulty's wheel. Well, floundering's not fair. He was actually very calm, surprisingly calm. At that point, I said to the TV, I said, "That's it. He's done. They should ride for Del Toro now." And glad I was proven right on that one. But yeah, I thought his race was over a couple of times, and then suddenly on the Cipressa, only a few K later, he was completely back in control and then guiding it. And it always looks better. It was like when he won Strade Bianche a few years ago, when he's got blood pouring out his leg and rips on his jersey. I was like, this just looks a lot more intense now. So yeah, I think it was a great win. And the sprint at the end, like I interviewed Tadej earlier this year, and we spoke about San Remo and Roubaix. And for anyone who hasn't read the article, he told me a bit about how he'd been working on his sprint and how he thinks that Roubaix might come down to that. He needs to be prepared for it to be a small group at Roubaix and for him to basically sprint in the velodrome. And it made sense because obviously for San Remo, if he wants to win that, he needs to be able to sprint because it's very unlikely he'll come into that by himself. And it showed because he kicked very well. He led out the sprint and then held off Pidcock, who is not a slow sprinter.
No, and Pidcock had the right position as well. Like, just like you were saying, Tom, he's out of the race now. When this was part of the race that I watched live, was in a pub garden in London, and had it on my phone. It's tiny, so you're watching it about that size. And Pogacar was in front in the final kilometer, like final 500 meters. Pogacar was in front. I was like, guys, I think Pidcock's got this. I think because he can decide when to come round. He's got the speed. Pidcock's probably got a better sprint, even though he's smaller. And I was proved wrong. But it was, again, it's always like this, but it's so close. And it's amazing that it all comes down to a bike throw, really.
Yeah. I think it's the first time I've actually rooted for Tom Pidcock. Sorry, Tom. But Tadej is so dominant, and he's such a nice guy, and you want to see him win and be this incredible athlete that he is. But at the same time, it's getting a little like, okay, Tadej wins. So there's having a mix-up there. That's possible for him to continue missing out on a monument. But it's not.
But the counterpoint to that is, now he's won this, you don't have to worry about him at this race anymore, probably. Like, he might never come back. And if he wins Roubaix in 2 weeks' time, which, we now know is plausible. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it's plausible. Then all he's got to do is win a 5th Tour de France and the Vuelta next year. And what's the point in racing anymore? He's done it.
But do you think as a racer, wouldn't that be you want to beat the absolute best at it? So if Tadej's not there, you're like, finally, I have a chance at winning. That's not the same than beating the best rider out there.
No, I think Tom Pidcock would be quite happy to win Milan-San Remo without Pogacar.
With or without, yeah.
I agree. I agree that it would have meant more, but it's still San Remo. I think someone like Pidcock has got so much chance in the future now. Now he's proved that he can hang out with Pogacar, even though Pogacar crashed and stuff. Why couldn't he do it? So yeah, there's a hope for the future there, which is what Tom learned about from his coach the other day.
Yeah, I picked up the phone to so Kurt Bogarts is his coach. He's been working with Kurt since 2018. So Pidcock was 19 at the time when he started working with Kurt. He was his coach before Ineos. He was his coach at Ineos, and then when Pidcock moved to what is now called Pinarello Q36.5 last year, Kurt followed him there. Obviously not followed him there, but as part of they went as a package. And he said this is just the continuous progression of Pidcock and expect more things. I mean, obviously he would say this because he's the person coaching him, but expect bigger things. Interestingly, I asked, because when I was watching it, I was saying, well, he's going to go on the Poggio descent. We're going to see another Mohoric situation. Mm-hmm. Pidcock's the best descender in cycling at the moment. Oh. And Kurt Bogarts basically said he said it was not a smart move to do that. And he said Pidcock did everything right. He made the point that Pogacar had basically reconned that road so many times that he knew every single bump, rock, corner on it. And, you know, if they'd both attacked, they would have gone the same speed. He wouldn't have dropped him. And all he would have done was ended up at a speed that was probably too dangerous and might have risked crashing both of them. So it was, in Kurt's opinion, it was out of respect to his opponent that they kind of didn't attack on that descent. And it worked out well for both of them. They both had their chance at the end. Pidcock genuinely couldn't have done anything better. It just happened. He was against the rider who he said afterwards was the best cyclist ever. So that happens.
All right, moving on. Shall we talk about who may or may not be retiring, who is retiring? The news of this week of people's careers coming to an end.
The first bit, the who may or may not, is referring to Chris Froome, 5-time Tour de France winner, 40-year-old, currently still four-time Tour de France winner. Sorry, I correct myself. I'm getting ahead of myself. He could be a 5-time Tour de France winner, for all we know. It's still out there for him to get and him to chase. 4-time Tour de France winner, 40-year-old Chris Froome, who, as we understand, is without a team. Hasn't raced since last year's Tour of Poland. We checked today, actually, and he is still registered on the UCI's whereabouts scheme. And so for anyone that doesn't know, this is the testing protocol where you have to give in your information about where in the world you are so that they can turn up and test you at any point. It generally, for cyclists who are retiring, it's kind of the last bit of paperwork you do is to strike yourself off that scheme so they don't have to come round, and that's kind of like the final nail in the coffin.
And also a bit of a relief, you know. You could go on holiday,
and
without
Froome,
having to update that.
Even though he doesn't have a team, and as far as we understand, is without a contract since Israel Premier Tech rebranded as NSN this season, was or is still part of that scheme, or at least was per the last update on the 10th of March. So he could still be a pro cyclist. What we do know conclusively about Chris Froome is that he is the new Chief Innovation Officer of Vector, which is an AI training platform. What that involves, I don't know. I am told it is an advisory role, not a full-time role, but that he will be heavily involved with the leadership of the business. And they've done a nice video with him online of him doing a mock interview for the job. And there's some pictures of him holding Vector products. So he's as involved as we'd expect him to be so far. Whether this is replacing a racing career remains to be seen.
Interesting. Question for you guys. He's been fizzling steadily the last few years in both in relevance, but also in race appearances. Do you think a guy like him with such a glowing palmares should have retired on the top?
Depends. Am I him in this scenario, or am I a fan?
Either one. If those opinions differ.
Well, he's been paid millions of pounds to keep racing his bike for the last. When did he join? 5 years. Well, this not for this year. This year not, but like 2020 to 2025, 2021 to 2025, he was paid millions to keep racing his bike. He clearly likes it. It's the world he knows. So that would be one point of view. I think as a fan, it definitely has diminished his legacy because we don't think of Chris Froome, all-conquering Chris Froome, you know, who won all 3 Grand Tours in the same year, 12 months. We think of Chris Froome, the guy the cameras cut to as he drops from the peloton at the small stage race you're watching on TV. So, you know, I think I'd think of Chris Froome differently if he'd retired, but I'm not in charge of Chris Froome's, you know, enjoyment of life or his finances. That's for sure.
All I will say on this topic is word of warning. Mark Cavendish. People said to Mark Cavendish, "You're never going to win a Tour stage again. It's been years. You're past your best." People said to Chris Froome, "You're never going to win in a 5th Tour de France." But what did Cav do? He plugged away. He kept going. Was arguably racing at a higher level than Chris Froome has been for the last few years.
Arguably.
But I don't blame him for not ruling himself out. As long as he believes in himself, and he's stopped doing it in recent years, but in previous years, he's come out and said, well, why not aim for a 5th Tour de France? Why not try and be competitive at that race? And we saw it. There was the stage on Alpe d'Huez that Tom Pidcock won in 2022.
2022. It's 4 years ago.
Yeah, that is 4 years ago, actually. Where Froome was in the... But it felt like a renewed Froome. And this was at a time where people said, oh, he should have gone out in 2019 after the crash at the Dauphiné. He'd won the Giro the year before. And we saw him finish... I think he finished 3rd that day, and it felt like a new beginning. It wasn't a new beginning, but as long as he feels like he can be competitive and he has enough drive to be, and enough money coming into his bank account, maybe, then I don't blame him. I don't begrudge him. I don't think it will tarnish his legacy. I think when we get to the end of his career, when he does, if he finally announces it, we will see the highlights reel and we will go, oh, wow, he was some rider. How did we forget? We are not worthy, and we apologise to you, Chris, for the slander.
Remind me of the wildcard teams for this year's Tour de France.
Pinarello Q36.5.
Yep. He's not going to be there. Total Energies.
And not Caja-Rural, yeah.
He could be. I can see him. Chris Froome, Total Energies.
Yeah.
Why not? Like, you know, what's the 8th French guy of that team? Sorry to. I'm really gonna throw them under the bus here. Jordan Chagat. No, he actually finished in the top 10 last year. He's the one guy, yeah. But you know, why not get him on that team?
There was a period where I'd have said Chris Froome's future was destined for the Unibet Rose Rockets, but I'm not sure now.
Can they afford him?
Well, I don't know.
Well,
YouTube pays these days.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Pays us. Look at us.
All right. So we move on to someone who's actually for sure retiring.
Yeah, I mean, after 16 years, it feels like longer. Nairo Quintana is retiring. That's the story. Nairo Quintana is only 36, which is a little bit of a surprise to me because I just have him in my head as, you know, the same age as Chris Froome and people like that. But I guess he was really young when he was finishing on the podium of the Tour de France in 2013 and 2015 and 2016, which is a long time ago now as well. But yeah, he's retiring at the end of the season after quite a long career, but a bit like Chris Froome, although less, because Nairo Quintana, as I was telling these guys earlier, has actually been racing a whole lot more, and you know, not winning, but I'm sure he's been helpful to the team and, you know, been a good road captain and stuff like that. But yeah, he's quitting at the end of the year. And
quite a career he had as well.
Yeah,
not as glowing perhaps as Chris Froome, but he was he did bring the excitement anytime the roads pitched upwards.
He won the Vuelta, he won the Giro, he paved the way for Egan Bernal to be the first Colombian to win the Tour de France. I mean, yeah, we were talking about this in a meeting earlier, and I think Froome and Quintana suffer because they're from an era. They were at their peak in an era when there weren't a lot of kind of great general classification riders. You know, they were the top guys, but they weren't as exciting as we have now. Before that, you kind of the sandwich between like the Armstrong era basically and the Pogacar era, and they themselves, you know, great champions, but perhaps in a bit of a dip between. Not saying Armstrong was a high, but definitely in terms of winning was a high.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if you've got memories of Quintana, Tom.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. Like, my first Tour de France that I went to was 2016. And I'm going as a young British lad who is fist pumping for the British Grand Tour contender in Chris Froome. And at that time, Quintana obviously rubbed against everything that was Chris Froome. So he was not the enemy, but he was the kind of antagonist to my protagonist, Chris Froome. So
right.
I was looking at
Mark-
the time gaps to
Mark-
Quintana at the time,
Mark.
going, "Oh no, he's gaining time," or "Oh no," but he was a really strong. He pushed Froome a lot in those tours, and I don't know. I think the memory I'll just have of
Yeah,
him is that steely faced climbing, where he just doesn't look like he's suffering at all, and he's pulling away and he's knocking out a tempo and he's doing it by himself in the mountains. Doesn't make for the best watching sometimes. I think fans always like to see a bit of themselves and a bit of struggle in their heroes. But he was just brilliant, and he was able to time his attacks so well. And yeah, I mean, I don't know if he'll be missed in the current sense because he hasn't done a lot in the last few years. But when he won that Giro d'Italia, he was a very worthy winner, and yeah, has a good legacy at the Tour and everything, and has got the wins to prove it. And as you say, Adam, paved the way for a lot of cyclists in Colombia. So, and now Colombian cycling, we see it in Dani Martinez, in Egan Bernal, in lots of riders that would probably all have looked up to Quintana when they were coming through.
For
He
sure.
finished 19th at Tirreno.
Did he?
So, yeah. Like, you know,
Call off the retirement.
like, I don't know. That's not horrendous.
Yeah.
Not at all.
It's UCI points.
It's absolutely UCI points. And what else was I going to? One more thing on Quintana before we move on is I think a bit hamstrung by Movistar being really weird about 10 years ago. Like I don't know if you remember, but they kind of put him and Valverde and Enric Mas, I want to say. Like they kept putting them in the same race.
And Marc Soler. There was the Trident, wasn't it?
The Trident, the Movistar Trident, the 2018 Tour de France, Movistar lined up with Quintana, Valverde, Soler, and Landa.
Yeah.
And that wasn't in like a UAE, like super loading it with riders all working for Pogacar. That was 4 riders all working quite separately in an 8-man team.
Best of luck, lads. May the best man win.
Yeah. The biggest stories of this past week are the most read stories or online, and one of them is another recall story. We've been doing a lot of these, and this week it was about the US recall of a Specialized e-bike that was already recalled in Europe and the UK earlier this year. And we talked about recalls last week in the podcast as well. And so I guess my question to you is, do you think recalls are happening more frequently or are more common, or are we just reporting on them more?
I can't imagine. I mean, I don't know the data. I can't imagine they're that much more common now. Like nothing's changed. Like these bikes are pretty much the same, sold in the same volume, made in the same factories. So I wonder if it's just us reporting on them more, or just kind of more checking, maybe.
So
I don't know.
maybe it's a good thing that we're seeing more of these recalls, and that ultimately the end result is a safer product.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that a lot of these recalls are because of things that could happen to the fork or the steerer tube, like the bits of the bike that you can't afford to fail, and it's better to be safety first with them, I think. So I don't think any of these brands have kind of suffered massively, apart from Shimano and their crankset recall. It should be said, but that was so much bigger than the rest of them.
I mean, Tom, you report on these a lot. Do you see a commonality among the recalls?
Yes and no. I don't. There's always a lot of recalls, and this goes beyond cycling products. And I wonder if it's more security checks on things these days, or whether it's the Consumer Product Safety Commission in the US, which would be responsible for this one, are clamping down and everything a lot more. It's, we feel a bit of a duty to report them because we are direct to the consumers on that one. Like people who have bought this bike are not necessarily checking for recalls on the Consumer Product Safety Commission's website, but they might be reading Cycling Weekly. And if we can reach them with that and tell them, actually, there's an issue with your bike, and they say that could cause you serious harm, then we are providing a service there. I've never been affected personally by a recall. I don't buy any bikes, which is probably why. But it is, it's an important news topic for us to cover, I think.
I think I've had more gadget recalls, like watches and computers and things like that. I had one where I had a watch that I was wearing during a flight, and out of nowhere it started heating up, and I was like, "Ooh, this is getting a little warm," to the point where I had to take it off and was like, hit the bell button. I was like, "Ding, hi, this thing is getting really hot. Can you take it somewhere?" And the attendant goes like, yeah, sure. And I guess they have like a fire bin or something there where they put him safe. But yeah, that was because they make that announcement on
Yeah, yeah.
flights. If you have an issue or
Yeah,
experience
they
an issue
do.
with your electronic devices, let us know. And I was like, you told me to tell you when I have an issue and I have an issue. And that's the only time I've actually had like an electronic like issue where this should have been a recall. May have been. I didn't check. But that's the only product malfunctioning I've experienced.
I see it sometimes where I go to the supermarket and there'll be a little notice board that will say, by the way, this dog food is being recalled
Right.
because it's going to give your dog life-threatening and crippling E. coli. And in that moment, I'll be like, did I buy the dog food and eat the dog food? I don't think I did, but I might have. But that's the only time where I've really been aware of recalls in everyday life. But I'm sorry what happened about your watch then, Rook? Did you get it back? Did you reach out to the brand?
Yeah, it cooled down at some point the attendant came back and gave me my watch back. And I was like, cool, I'm gonna put it in my bag and not wear it and then send it back to the brand. The brand was nice. Can you send it to us, please? We want to know what's going on. And they sent me a new one. But yeah, that was probably the most like bizarre things I've ever experienced.
Wow.
I was thinking that just the other day because I have heard that announcement more and more on flights about kind of especially battery packs, which I guess like we do carry more tech around all the time. I don't know what the answer is with the recalls. If it is, I don't think anything's getting worse. But I think we should be reassured that these things are being checked and are reported. Like I don't know if my front fork suddenly developed a crack, would I be good enough to report it to the relevant people? I don't know.
Right, as we're
Maybe.
talking this, I was like, should I have reported this watch issue to the
Yeah.
Consumer Protection Agency? I don't know. I just reported it to the brand directly. So
Well,
anyway,
for the sake of getting your money back, I would always report it.
to the brand anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, we will continue keeping y'all apprised on any recall that we see. And I guess rest assured that products are being tested very well. And it's no safer these days maybe than it was. Or no less safe these days, rather, than it was ages ago when we didn't report on them so heavily. Shall we go back to Milan-San Remo?
Let's go back to Milan-San Remo.
Clearly, our readers are very interested in this race, and as they should be, because it was a very interesting race.
Yeah, what more can we say about the men's race before we move on to the slightly more eventful women's race? Adam, you've politely raised your hand.
Well, I thought I'd do it in real life. It was also to check if I'd frozen or not. But Wout van Aert. I mean, I am going to say when I'm working professionally, of course, I don't have a favorite cyclist. But when I'm watching as a fan, there's something about Wout van Aert, and I think it's because he has so much bad luck and seems like quite a nice guy that just kind of makes me root for him. And to finish third at San Remo, like obviously, he probably wants to be challenging for the win. He's expected to be challenging for the win, but he's clearly not quite at the level where he could escape with Pogacar and Pidcock, and fair play because no one really is. But then to kind of get away in the finale and win, and he if the two in front had been playing games, who's to say what could have happened? He would have had a chance. Yeah. And that's kind of again, we've come back to the beauty of San Remo is that it's not quite hard enough to make it like too selective, but it is hard enough to make it selective enough. And all kinds of different riders can be up there. So you can have like the incredibly light Pidcock and the probably tiny little bit heavier Pogacar, and then Van Aert, who's would look incredibly skinny compared to us, I'm sure, but he's a bigger rider and he can get on the podium with a monument. And yeah, I really hope that he has a good spring because he deserves it. Every year it
Yeah.
seems. Yeah. I
Everyone loves a Wout
Yeah.
win. Like I've never been in a setting either with like a cycling party or in a press room where people don't love to see him win. Like he's so liked, and as you mentioned, he has so much bad luck, and he's such a great teammate, and he puts it all out on the line. And this was a wonderful example again where he was just like, and now I'm gonna make a break for it. And
Hmm.
like everyone instantly is like, go, go, go. You know, like
Yeah.
everyone wishes him well because he's the nice guy that has the worst of luck.
I was going to say he got the gap down to 4 seconds in the end, and you know, earlier when I was saying about how I don't see anyone beating Pogacar at Paris-Roubaix, I've written after that in my notes, Wout van Aert maybe. I think Pogacar's the favourite, Wout van Aert's the second favourite. He looked phenomenally strong. Maybe it was a training effort. Maybe it was this race has gotten away from us, but I'm going to practice my whatever 3-minute power here and see how I can go. And he went very well, and that's why he was very pleased at the end. So he's
Yeah.
thinking that cobble is mine.
I was
We
wondering
were-
what was being said in his headphones in that moment. Like right before he went, I was like, were they just like, just make a run for it. You do you. Whatever. Like what
do you
was
think you
going
can
on
hear,
in his
do you
earpiece.
think you can hear anything?
I don't know.
I don't know. I'd love to know.
Yeah, I mean, you're breathing out your eyes at that point, aren't you? So I don't think that maybe your senses are a bit diminished.
Yeah. I think two things. One, we were talking about kind of how Froome and Quintana will be remembered earlier, and I think Van Aert, because he doesn't always win, will be remembered so much more fondly than others of his generation. Because obviously, his great rival Mathieu van der Poel has won like so many. Van Aert has never won the Tour of Flanders. Van der Poel's won what, 3, 4 Tour of Flanders? I can't even remember. 3 Tour of Flanders, let's say, and he's won Paris-Roubaix twice as well. Something that Van Aert's never done. But just in terms of kind of, you'll remember him, and that's like, and that I think that almost counts for more than just pure results. And the other thing I was going to say was just like, talking of his bad luck. I will never. So I went to the Tour of Flanders for the first time as a journalist in 2022, and that was the year that Wout got COVID just before the Tour of Flanders. Yet, like another piece of bad luck. And I remember I went to the Jumbo Visma press conference because that's what it was then, and it was like he'd died. Like the mood in the room was so somber. I think it was Tish Benoot and Christophe Laporte answering questions, and they both they were about to cry. It was like, and that's how much he means to that team, and that's how much he means to Belgium. And it's amazing. But I'll never forget that. So I was just like, what have I? It was just like a Marriott on the edge of Ghent, and I walked into this tiny like business room at the side, and I was like, what's happened to Wout van Aert? I'm pretty sure he just got COVID. So it's good to see him back. It's good to see him back.
On the topic of people that are very important to Belgium,
Mm.
Lotte Kopecky won Milan-San Remo. I don't know if there was as much hype around her at the start of it. I think with SD Worx Pro Time, they've got the card in Weebus, and I think people just figured this is going to come down to a sprint again because it came down to a sprint last year. And it's really nice to see the unpredictability of Milan-San Remo still applying to the women's peloton as well. And we'll see a different race, and we saw 2 different races on Saturday, and we'll get that every year now for the rest of time, hopefully. Interesting race. We'll come on a second to talk about Debora Silvestri's crash. When I was watching it, the crash was so violent to watch on the TV that it almost made everything that happened afterwards feel a bit futile. And I don't mean that in a way that lessens Kopecky's win. I mean it in a way that I was just concerned about Silvestri's well-being.
You were just taken out of like enjoying live cycling. That's completely fair enough. Yeah.
Totally.
The next hour of my mind and headspace was then dedicated to checking X for updates from the team, trying to find out what had gone wrong, what had happened, who had gone down, what the schedule was. Obviously, Kasia Niewiadoma was bleeding as well. You had Kim Lacourt attending to her at the side of the road, and I think it did lessen the finale a bit, but obviously the people that were up the road didn't know well. And SD Works played a blinder, having Kopecky there,
Mm.
Wiebes behind. They ended up winning from the front group, and then Wiebes won the second group. So it was completely their race to win at the end. But yeah, I don't know. Did you guys feel the same way? You're nodding along. Rook, did you feel the same way when you were
100%.
watching it?
Yeah, 100%. After that, I was like, for all I care, Van Nooyen is going to continue riding off the front by herself, and everyone else is so distracted with this crash. Like, I could have seen a world where the rider who was up the front from Visma Leasebike by herself, I thought she was just going to ride it out because everyone else is like taken out with this massive pileup. It ended up being less of a like the amount of riders involved was less than I thought, but it was just such a decisive moment in the race, and there were so many of the bigger names involved that I thought this is the end of the race. And then I was like, oh right, getting back into it, there is this whole Wiebes and Kopecky dynamic, and the race is back on. And I will say SD Works played that beautifully. They played that so well, knowing that Wiebes was back there, and she, in the chase group, she was never far from the front. She was just hanging in, just there when needed to be called upon, but also able to take it down a notch. And yeah, they had a beautiful race, but I agree with you. Like, it was almost a secondary race. Like, there was the race up until the crash, and then there was the other race.
Yeah,
the finale.
It makes me. Firstly, I am quite happy that Kopecky's back. Not that she was ever away, because she didn't have a bad. I think I keep assuming Kopecky had a bad season last year because she didn't have her normal season, which is winning everything. But she still won Flanders. She still was Belgian national champion. She still kind of did a lot of stuff, just didn't kind of reach her previous heights, and she was injured, obviously. And I think it's good for racing this classic season, because there was a kind of thought that FDJ was so strong at Strada, and they were so strong at Omloop as well, with Vollering, that they could be the new kind of SD Works and just kind of walk everything. But if there's a strong SD Works and a strong FDJ Suez, and we haven't really seen much of Little Trek yet, there's a lot more to be there's a lot more. It's not just kind of one team, one rider. There's a lot more to watch out for. But what I would say is, when you've got the best sprinter in the world in the bunch behind you, and you're out ahead in front, as Kopecky was, as Misha Brederworld might be on another day, or Anna van der Breggen, who's bringing Wiebes back? Like, the race is done at that point, to an extent, for the front group.
Yeah, the dynamic was really interesting, and I was looking at that front group and I was saying, okay, Kopecky wins on paper from this group, but it's been a tough finale. She's not going to ride, so she risks it coming back. UAE Team ADQ rode really well. Dominika Vladarczyk, her attack was the one that pulled away that group to begin with, so Kopecky has her to thank for part of that.
Yeah, for sure.
She was riding in that group for Gasparini, who she had with her. So Gasparini was getting a free ride from there. Then you had your two kind of unpredictable finishers in Pluck Pieterse and Noemi Ruig, who we know have a good kick on them. But after that finale, and they're having to do a few turns, and it was really hard to call, and it made it exciting. And this goes back to what you were saying then, Adam, about we just don't know which way this classic season is going to go, and to have a number of strong contenders in there. And unfortunately, Kasia Niewiadoma crashed out, but she's been really strong so far this season as well. So for the rest of the races coming up, your Flanders, your Roubaix, your Ardennes, it's looking very exciting.
How good was Noemi Ruig? Like, that's a rider we don't talk about a lot. And her positioning was excellent. Her attacking, she was always there. She got third at San Remo last year, second this year, maybe the top step next year, who knows? But that's a rider I'm watching, because she had a really good opening to her race season in Australia as well. And she's not someone we talk about a lot, or there's not a lot of attention around her, but she's definitely one that I'll be watching for the season, because I think she has what it takes to get lucky, and has a hell of a kick.
She's had the most podiums ever at Milan-San Remo women, which is
the two editions we've had in modern cycling. Yeah.
But yeah, no, she's good.
Yeah, I know she's thought very well off within EF, which is not saying a lot, but I think there's a feeling within EF that she's not getting hyped up as much as she should, which is maybe a bit of a blessing. So
Mm.
they
Yeah.
should keep that a bit quieter, I think.
Right
She's
under the radar. Yeah,
Yeah.
she's 24. Like, there's more to come from Nomi Rook. That's for sure.
absolutely. Cool. All right, before we go back to San Remo, Adam, what's happening in British cycling with the handlebar with rules?
Sure. It's as you'll all know, last year the UCI introduced finally, well, over the past few years they've been introducing rules into handlebar width and kind of like drop bars, like whether how flared they can be and things like that. And British cycling kind of made noises last year that they'd be copying the UCI rules in domestic racing. They don't have to, of course. It's up to them, but they would be. And there's just been a bit of confusion over which rules are being applied and at which races, because it's not. We're talking like semi-pro races, if semi-pro at all. Yeah, like I'm not saying I could go and enter them, but I know people that ride these races. Like, it's not like elite level, and depending on which race you go to and which commissaire you get on the day, riders are being forced to change their handlebar position based on kind of inner measurement, which is slightly different to the UCI one. Tom, you were telling us about the measurements earlier, weren't you?
Yeah, so the easiest way to envisage this is the UCI have basically put two rules on it. So the outer of the handlebars, which the UCI has put at 400 millimeters, and the inside of your handlebars, so inside the brake hoods, which the UCI has put as 280 millimeters, and that basically stops people from turning them in too much at the end. British Cycling has decided to enforce one of the rules, but not the other. So they've said you don't need to bother with the 400 millimeter outside one, but you really need to follow the 280 millimeter inside one. And then it gets confusing because there's British cycling events and there's a few UCI races in the UK. So for the UCI races, you need to follow the UCI rule, but then the British cycling one, you only need to follow half the rule. And really, as Adam says, these are not professional races, some of them. So, and I mean, all of them are not, a lot of them are not professional races. So it's
Why institute this rule? Like, in terms of all the safety rules, why this one?
Well, that's our colleague Pat, who spoke to some of these people. That's exactly what he was told. Is that we've spoken a lot about potholes and things like that on the podcast in recent weeks, and there's a lot more going on British roads than things that the dangers that narrow handlebars cause. Let me tell you that. I mean, most of these races aren't on completely closed roads. It's not going to be the handlebars that are the issue here. But
and we've got an accessibility issue in British road racing at the moment. I wrote a big feature about that for the magazine, which is out on the 26th of March. So when people are probably listening to this, about this. And one of the things that came up was that people just don't have the money to do road racing at that level, that non-professional level. It's costly to travel to places. It's costly to enter races. And if British Cycling is now turning around to you and saying, oh, and by the way, you need to get a new set of handlebars because you can't use those ones, people are going to say, oh, why am I going to bother then? I'll keep my ones and I'll just ride myself out on the street and I won't enter any races. Yeah. So hopefully we don't get to that. And I don't know how many people it will affect. And I know British Cycling is under pressure from people to change these rules or get rid of them. So it's a developing story.
Mm-hmm. They're reviewing it, and they might clarify it. But yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, if I turned up to a race, I don't know whether that rule is going to be enforced or not, let alone how it's going to be enforced. Like, who knows?
I feel like I need to go to my garage and measure. I have no idea what I have my handlebar set up. Well, no, I know that I don't like 40 centimeter handlebars. Like, that's too wide for my preference, and I'm pretty sure I'm breaking the rules if I were to enter a British cycling race. But
yeah, exactly. I mean, I think I know how wide my handlebars are. I actually think my handlebars are too wide, so that's another conversation. But like, if you're someone who doesn't think about it that much and you turn up to a race and then you can't race because you've got 38 centimeter bars, that's a day ruined.
You've had your porridge for breakfast, you've packed your gels, you've laid out your kit, you've pinned on your numbers, and they've said, actually, 10 millimeters off, mate.
And you're
10
going to win
million,
the.
I mean,
Yeah, that's a
those
lot.
are really narrow bars. But
Yeah.
actually, is this for every like level of like? What about like junior or like?
It's not for
you know,
juniors.
okay.
It's not for juniors, but it is. But it's unclear what level it is for. Like, is it for just the kind of the national A races, which are like the kind of like the blue ribboned events, or is it for kind of like if I turned up? I'm going to make up a race now. If I turned up to the Papworth Everard Sir Reginald Carpenter Memorial race, am I going to be allowed to race? I mean, I don't know. We won't know until we turn up.
You've paid your £30 entry and you're hoping you are, but you might have that cruelly ripped away from you.
Yeah, I'm going to win that race when I put it on.
All right, so all our British racers wanting to race at a semi-pro level should just go check their handlebars now before you get into the next bike race.
But you might be fine. That's the mad thing.
That's what I'm saying. Just check
But
it.
you might not. Then that is Schrodinger's handlebars, everybody.
All right, so the most debated article of this week only went up yesterday, and that is about Silvestri's crash. So, as we mentioned earlier, the women's race at San Remo saw a horrific crash, and the Debora Silvestri, we saw her come into a blind corner, basically got catapulted off her bike, somersaulted over the barriers, and then fell on the road below, completely motionless, and just lay there for as long as the camera had her inside. And I don't know about you guys, but for me, this was the scariest crash I've seen since probably Annemiek van Vleuten at Rio. The comments afterwards on social media were almost worse than the crash itself, in that there were a lot of people of the opinion that this is why women shouldn't race bikes, or some very tedious comments like she should have stayed in the kitchen, or whatever, these attitudes that people felt the need to express after a rider had such a horrific crash. And that was I want to say surprising, but it wasn't even that surprising. We get these comments all the time, but it created quite the stir, enough for one of my colleagues to ask me to write about it. I expressed my opinions. There's people studying this behavior, which I find very fascinating. And as a response, we got a lot of comments in support of Debora and in support of women bike racing, which is very heartening, because usually when we get a lot of comments, it's not a joy to read. Thoughts?
I think the answer is very simple to these people, which is Debora Silvestri crashed. Their argument is that makes her not worthy of riding a bike, and anybody of the same sex as her. To them, I say, Mr. Tadej Pogacar also crashed during that race.
Exactly.
So should he be quote unquote back in the kitchen, or like it's nonsensical? And the crash was, whether it was her fault or not, it wasn't her fault. But in a situation where that is the rider's fault, these things happen. They're racing incidents. It's people that are using it as a platform to express their misogynistic opinions, which people who hold those opinions will do at any opportunity. And I don't think we should dwell. It's a shame that they surface, but I don't think they should be dwelled on too much. It's a small subsect of people, a very small subsect of people.
Yeah, I mean, when our colleague Hannah asked me, like, you should write about this, I was like, do I? Like, I'm not moved to give any more ink to these kind of people and these opinions. But then I saw just the prevalence of it and kind of the stirring that was happening online. So I was like, oh, I'll take this up. And what I found was that there are people studying this behavior, and because whenever a man crashes or has an injury or makes a mistake in sports, it's the narrative around that is tactics, conditions, bad luck. Whereas if a woman makes a mistake or crashes or whatever, it's a question about, should women even participate in this sport? What are women's limitations? It has nothing to do with the sport. It becomes about the gender, which is just a wild thing that happens in these scenarios, and it's moments like this that get played up even more, and so suddenly everyone's talking about it. I did a quick Google yesterday, and it was the Times of India and ESPN and all these magazines and titles that don't normally cover cycling, let alone women's cycling, are talking about a woman crashing her bike, and that does drive me up the wall.
What connected but slightly separately is I really hate the kind of the rubbernecking that goes on around crashes like this. Like, you're right, like, you know, places that don't normally write about cycling write about it when there's a big crash. There definitely is misogyny at play there when it's a women crashing as well, but like, if there's a serious pile up in a men's race, you'll see people kind of posting about it. And I just find, I'm not sure the footage should be shared around on social media. Like, that makes me really uncomfortable. And that's how I saw it, because I didn't watch this race live. I just kind of went on Instagram to check something, and it was there. I think SBS in Australia just like clicked it and published it. And I guess they might have known she's fine by then, but not definitely. And Tom and I and you have all kind of worked through days where cyclists haven't been fine, and like, it's, you know, I don't know the answer to making cycling safer. I don't. But one thing that definitely doesn't help anyone is just kind of clipping up the crash and showing it again and again and again. The day that Muriel Furrer died at the World Championships in 2024 in Zurich was just so awful. And the same is true of any time that a rider has died. Like Gino Maida, I remember that day, Tom. I think we were both working. It was grim, and I think riders just need a bit more space when that happens. You know, like the camera focusing in on Nivea Doma and Kim LaCourte as well. Just, there are some things that shouldn't be shown, I think.
To play devil's advocate, these are also key moments in the race. I know in TNT Sports Discovery Plus in the UK, at the bottom of the page, it will say, you can scroll back and it will say crash. So you can click on it and you can watch the crash. And this was a key moment in the race. So I understand why they replayed it. I don't think it needed to be replayed in slow-mo. It didn't add a lot, but in these moments, I guess directors are making split decisions on what to show and what not to show. Generally, the rule I would like to see is, if we know the rider's okay, then we can show it, because I cannot think of anything more abhorrent than showing somebody losing their life on television, if that is what happens. But I guess what it feeds into is this wider societal issue about shock baiting and stuff on social media. And I'm sure if you look at the views of Kopecky winning compared to the views of the Silvestri crash on social media, there is difference of millions and millions between them. And
100%.
that is what is important to a lot of these people. Or not a lot of these people, but a lot of these organizations that will share crash videos and post pictures of them. I mean, you talked about the different publications that had ran stories on it that wouldn't usually cover women's cycling. They're very much doing it on a guise that you will click on that article for the promise of a video. And it says a lot about society that these get tens of thousands of clicks because people want to see that.
Yeah, in the US, in our coverage, the commentators were apologizing. They're like, "Sorry, we're not in control who's showing this footage. We wouldn't be showing this footage. We encourage you to go, to the team's website so you can find out how she's doing, all that stuff." They were very apologetic because ultimately it wasn't their choice to keep replaying that crash. And I agree that crashes are key moments in the race, but we didn't know how she was doing for a long time, and I think they could have shown the crash as the pileup and moved on. They didn't have to show her, somersaulting over the barrier so many times. I personally don't want to watch that over and over again. And I just think about her parents and her friends and her, family watching this race live and just being subjected to that over and over again. It's horrific.
We should add that she is okay.
Yes.
She broke 5 ribs. She's still in hospital, and she will be for the next few days. she's on respiratory support. I think it's obviously because she's had a lot of big impact. I was winded just watching it, so I can't imagine the pain she's in.
I'm
And I guess
surprised that's all she had, to be honest. Like,
Mm.
I've literally had that 5 broken ribs all at once, collapsed lung, all of that. So I know exactly what that feels like, and I am surprised that that is all. I mean, it's horrific and terrible that she went through this, but like, it could have been so much worse.
yeah, it could have been. I guess all there is to say is, Deborah, I'm sure you're listening from the hospital in the south of Italy, and we wish you well,
We
and
really do.
we look forward to seeing you back racing soon.
Yeah, I mean that was the summary of my opinion piece was like the only correct response to this situation isn't analyzing or debating whether women belong on bikes. It's simply heal up, Deborah, get well. You know, this is a bike race that's been knocking people off their bikes for over a century, and she was the unfortunate one to hit the deck this year. And we hope she heals up. And that's all we need to say about a bike crash like this. Moving on, heroes and villains. What you got?
I've been thinking throughout this podcast, and my hero or villain isn't actually from, isn't someone our audience will know, hopefully. Well, because I'm not going to name them, but my villain is the person who I was. I don't want to say a member of our club, because I don't think this person is a regular cyclist with my cycling club. I think this might even be the first ride they've ever been on with us. But we do this ride on Wednesday nights called Hills and Pills, where we cycle up hills in Bristol in southwest England. There's about 13 of them. It's only 25k long, but the point is you do every hill, so it's like 600 meters of elevation in 25k. It's as brutal as you can do in an hour and a half, 2 hours on a Wednesday night in the kind of dusk. And it's brutal, it's hard, but everyone's very supportive, and everyone waits for each other at the top, and everyone kind of like gives each other the motivation, except for this one person who I wasn't there to hear this, but apparently was kind of chatting away with their mate. I've given away their gender now. Chatting away with his mate, and said something along the lines of, "Oh, lose a few pounds and you'll beat me next time," or like, "You'll be quicker up the hill if you're lighter." And I'm not around that kind of toxic world of cycling at all, because I cycle for fun. So I'm not thinking about how heavy I am, or this wasn't directed at me, I should say. I'm not around that kind of world of like criticizing and thinking about weight and fueling, and like I just I eat what I want, I cycle what I want, I'm fine. But the idea that someone can come along to a ride that I do all the time and body shame someone, even as a joke, probably wasn't a joke, because this person seems like quite the piece of work, but just I hate it. And that's everything I hate about cycling. And if I'd have heard it in person, and I'd been a slightly less confident person at that ride, I might never have come again. And that makes me so sad and so angry. So hopefully I never see that person again.
That is a fair villain, I think.
Yeah.
100%.
I don't have a villain this week. I've been told in previous weeks that I don't need to come equipped with both, and I'm trying to be more optimistic. So I've chosen as my hero, back on the San Remo train, Sylvain Dillier, who spent the best part of 200 kilometers ploughing into the, what's the sea there? The Ligurian Sea?
It's the Tyrrhenian Sea.
We'll call it the Italian coast. Ploughing into the Italian coast, again, like just by himself, very little help. And he is my hero because it didn't work out that well in the end for Alpecin Premier Tech. Van der Poel got dropped at the crucial moment and ended up cutting his hand in the crash. And I'm sure Dillier got on that bus after the race, and there was a bit of a sour mood, and he'd have maybe been thinking a bit bummed out that he'd done 200 kilometers on the front for everyone to be a bit bummed out. So I want to give him that recognition on here and let him know that it did not go unnoticed.
It's very nice.
Go on, Rook.
Yeah, I was gonna say I have a villain, but I think we covered it already. So I'm gonna go with two heroes. One is Kim LaCourt for stopping during the women's San Remo race after the crash and checking in on Kasia. She stayed with her, made sure she was talking, and then got on her bike and finished the race. And I think that is lovely sportsmanship. And I like to see that. And the other one is a personal one. My wife and I are expecting a child, and the Portland bike industry came together and surprised me with a little Strider bike for the incoming child last night. And it's super cute because they painted it to match one of my bikes, and it says Little Rook, and it was just super adorable. So the Portland bike industry community, I feel very loved, and they're my heroes.
How long will it be before the little one can get on the Strider bike?
Outside until they're big enough to wear a helmet. Inside, I think I will come up with some sort of trainer situation and encourage her to get in the saddle.
Good.
Yeah.
Sooner than they should, sounds like the answer is.
Yeah, exactly. As long as
Good.
they can reach the pedals, and off we go, off to the races.
We'll see what their VO2 max is as soon as possible.
Yeah. No, biking should be for fun, not just for bike racing.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. All right, I'm going to end the show with a little teaser. What races do we have coming up that we should be excited about?
Well, this Friday is the E3 Saxo Classic, which is one of my favorite races of the year because it ends up in a housing estate. I mean, what more could you want from a bike race than that? And then on Sunday is what is now called, are you ready for this? In Flanders Fields from Middelkerke to Wevelgem. And that is what used to be Ghent Wevelgem. So get ready for that. The women's race is just called In Flanders Fields in Wevelgem, maybe, because it doesn't go to Middelkerke. So the whole thing is an absolute mess. Tom?
Yeah, I think my scope is looking slightly beyond that at Flanders and Paris-Roubaix. I think this Classics campaign is now looking very ahead to Roubaix, and that's at least where I'm looking to. And it's probably because it's the next race I'm going to, which is I imagine why it's on my radar a lot. Rook, are you looking more short term or more long term than that?
Same longer term, as in like this weekend I'm gonna sleep in, and that is to say I'm gonna sleep beyond 3:00 in the morning, and then I will get up early again for Roubaix and Flanders. But no matter where you're watching, be sure to secure your connection and watch the Spring Classics with our exclusive NordVPN deal. Right now you can get huge savings on a 2-year subscription and a bonus Amazon gift card to boot. When you sign up, subscriptions start at $2.91 in US dollars or £2.22 pounds, and you can sign up via our streaming guide on our website. Thank you all for listening, and we'll catch you next week.
Speak then. Thank you.